Welcome to NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat Baniel, where you will discover breakthrough possibilities for your life through the brain's power to change. We're so happy that you can join us in making the impossible possible.
Welcome, Randy, to our podcast, to the NeuroMovement podcast. I am so excited to have you with us. I've been wanting this, dreaming about this for years, to find a platform to bring you to a bigger audience, because I think you and your work are just extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll say a few words about you. I mean, Randy's been a consultant, I guess also consultant, but a coach and a transformational coach for over 35 years. And with a very high level, big corporations, high level executives, their teams, really bringing transformation to the organizations she has been working with. However, Randy doesn't come in and tell them how to do their books or how to promote or how. She really works with them, the people that they are, and brings about shifts and transformation in the people that leads to transformations in outcomes for the corporation or organization she works with. I met Randy through a mutual friend about almost 20 years ago.
Exactly.
That loved my work and said, you've got to meet this woman because your work should be way more out in the world. What you do is incredible and novel and important. So you have to meet this woman. So the woman was Randy, and I met her. And it was a bit of a shock.
I'm an acquired taste.
And we started more in terms of my business and my life. And at a certain point, Randy first did a workshop that I did, a weekend workshop. And then she came and watched me work with kids. And that's when Randy realized, when she saw me working with a child with special needs, she got the hit of what it is that I do and offer. And so at a certain point, as I work, as some of you who've worked with us know, I normally have the parent or parents or caretakers in the room with the child, because I really believe that the child and the people who love the child and take care of the child and keep the child alive are what I call one brain. You can call it one system. So how the adults are, how they feel, what they do, how they interact with the child has profound impact on the child, and it should be that way. It's not about, oh my God, I should be really worried because I have an impact on my child. It's built to work that way. And what I started noticing is that at times when the child starts changing and progressing, it was almost like there was a veil, an invisible veil in front of the eyes of the parents. They kept seeing the child the way the child was before we started working with him or her. And as I often say, it's a big trauma for the parents to have a child that himself or herself are traumatized, and to find out that maybe the doctors think they will maybe never walk, or they're on the spectrum, or they have a genetic disorder. Nobody's prepared. There's no way to be prepared for anything like that. So, and I, first of all, am very busy with a child, and I focus on the child when I work with a child. And I didn't quite know, like, certainly not in a very brief way, how to sort of move the parents around and have them see the child through my eyes. And it occurred to me Randy would be good at that. And Randy, when I suggested it, she went like, oh my God, this is Randy. Oh my God, I would love to do that. You think the parents would want to? Said, because my big passion is parents. So she works with all those, CEOs and God knows what. And so there was the discovery, her passion is parents. And I started referring parents to her. And, not, she said she's an acquired taste. So at times parents get a little kind of like, oh my God, and parents don't want to be told that what they tend to hear is that something is wrong with me. I'm a bad parent, which has nothing to do with being a good or bad parent. It's like I use actually example Randy likes to use from my work. If your shoulder or your child's shoulder can't move and you bring them to me, it's not like you're a bad parent and that's why the shoulder doesn't move. So it's really a whole different level of a conversation, a transformation conversation, where we move ourselves to be and do in ways that are most beneficial for everything. And it took me a few more years. I'm condensing it in about 7 or so minutes, but a few more years to realize that it's really a conversation about leadership. So usually I at least used to think about leaders, again, corporations, military, political, this kind. But I haven't thought of a parent as a leader. It took me quite a while to actually get to it. And once I got to it, it was like, has to be done, has to be brought to the world, has to free parents that way. So now that we are having our podcast, I have this amazing opportunity, and she was, as always, a big yes, to interview and have a conversation with Randy. And this is just going to be one in a series of a podcast with Randy. This one is pre-recorded. I would definitely want to have a podcast with Randy where it's live and you guys can ask questions, because this is the introductory one. And then the other ones, I just want them to be organic with parents who ask questions.
Right.
So Randy, what is the first thing that you would like to say to the people who are listening? It will be parents, it will be practitioners, it will be caretakers, it'll be some professionals. What do you want to say?
Well,
why do you want to work with us?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say is just thank you for speaking, first of all, so powerfully about who I am and the commitment I am to making a difference. It means the world to me. You know how much I admire and respect what you do and who you are in the world. And so even getting a chance to participate with you and your families and your organization and your practitioners is always a privilege for me. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. I think that the most important thing that I would like to start with, I mean, there's so many things, just like you said, I'm so glad we're going to have a chance to unfold more parts of the conversation. But I think the important thing is how, having worked with your parents for about 18 years now, all the different parents that are that I get a chance to work with that are in your organization or come to have sessions, is that my experience with those parents is that they are so hungry for how they might be able to make a bigger difference or how they can participate in alongside of the breakthroughs that they see with their children. So, you know, one of the things that we've noticed is that Anat and her team will have breakthroughs with a child, and because the parents, something happened to them way back at the time when the trauma first got established, you know, the diagnosis got established or whatever, the child was born with a special situation, they kind of are lagging behind where the children end up being. And so my opportunity is to give the parents tools for how they can also kind of upgrade their parenting that sort of matches the breakthroughs that Anat and her team have with the children. And they would, of course, they're so hungry for that. There's not a single parent I've ever met with that said, no, don't tell me how to do better. You know, every single parent I ever meet with is so committed. They would do anything for their child. And the notion that it might have something to do with them is always kind of surprising for parents, you know, because they think they're already doing every single thing they can possibly do. The idea that they could actually upgrade and invent new ways of interacting with their children is always kind of a surprise in a way. So it's very exciting. And like you said, I never, ever feel like it has to be done in a heavy-handed, you know, something's wrong or you're to blame. It's more like giving parents tools for how they can be extraordinary that match their commitment to raising their children. It's like a type of education, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's an education, but it's also very powerful personal transformation.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
so it's not like you're given a list of things to
No.
consider. It's really like one, like different possibilities. It's like in that way we match in our work, because my work is about possibilities,
Exactly.
and you create new possibilities, and the getting access to those possibilities is the transformational. It is transformational. I mean, it's all one thing. So I would like, if possible, and I'm going to tell a little story, but I'd like you, if you wouldn't mind, to unpack a little bit what you said, that because you went through it really fast, that it's a bit of a surprise for parents to discover that there is a role that they play, whether they know it or not, beyond what they already do for the child, that can make a difference in the child's life. So I'm going to say a few words about that. So it's not like another therapy or another, I don't know, vitamin, which might be a good thing to do, but it's about who they are and what they have possibilities, access, what they have access to within themselves, in relation to themselves and to the child and to the other parent and to the grandparents. I mean, all that stuff. And it's unfortunate, and to some extent even I went through that, and you helped me out of it way back. Is I know this couple, and they were never married, but it's like a divorce, right? Because they have a child. So it's been now 7 years, and they are just in a constant fight and back to the courts. The child now is 15, and it's not a pretty picture. And anyway, and the child has been asking them to not go to court. He's actually been expressing verbally some of what he needs, and kind of like the adult in the room, which I know you'll probably refer to in a minute. But the intensity of their upset and struggle is such that it just doesn't come through. They don't take it seriously. And it's not a question that the child will say, how everything's going to go, but just that part. And they just discovered that he's now vaping marijuana, right? He gets stoned. So first of all, 15 years old, upper class family, money, he has his own debit card. I mean, many of them will. So it's not like it needs to be handled, but it's not the end of the world. But that triggered a sense of something different needs to be done. And I gathered in no time that the whole focus on the child, it's not that the child is smoking, he's the problem. And I heard also your voice in my head saying, but I also got it. 95% of the problem is what's going on their end. And with some shifts in them, the child will have an opportunity, at least, to experience himself and everything differently and find other mechanisms of coping and being in the world. So this, I just heard it. I found out about it this morning. So it's right in my head right now.
Yes.
But usually the kids that we get, it's not drug issues, and they're not otherwise fully functioning teenagers, So we get 3 weeks old, we get 16 months old, we get 3 years old. I mean, sometimes we start with them when they're very little, and we work over a number of years.
Right.
So how about you just talk a little bit more from your point of view? What is it that you see when you tell, or what you think, when you say, kind of the bad news is it's really a lot about the parents and not just the child, even if it's just the genetic disorder or the medical situations, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk like when I first meet with parents, I'm going to tell you what I say to them right at the very beginning. And I think you'll find it really informative. So what I say to parents is, something happened at the beginning, somewhere along the line of them having been born with a particular challenge, a special need. And at that time, when you first got told about it, you went into what we would call survival mode, and your new normal changed, and you had to be incredibly vigilant. Maybe you even stayed up 24 hours a day watching your child and making sure that your child was going to survive. And at the beginning, if it even made a little peep, you were scared to let it cry because it might turn into a seizure. And then you might have, had to stay at the hospital for weeks longer than you thought. And, you found out that you had strength beyond where you ever thought you could have strength. And it's just like amazing. And you were this incredible caregiver. And then the child, and at the beginning, that was absolutely appropriate. And the child did thrive. So often when I get parents, the child has already survived. They're somewhere between 1 and about 3. Usually that's the average age of the parents, the kids of the parents I'm working with. And now the child is no longer at risk as far as survival. And what I end up having in front of me are parents that have shaped themselves in the shape of caregivers rather than what I might call leaders, or even what we might say parenting 101, sort of the normal way that we might parent a child. If we thought the child was going to have a future, if the child was going to be 5 and we knew that the child needed to be able to not bite another child or play nice with other children, or if we thought the child was going to, want to have a relationship when they're 14 with a girl or a boy or whatever, we oftentimes at the beginning got so heavily shaped by the survival mechanism, and we then gave up what we might call the leadership side of parenting, where our job is to develop the child, not just making sure they're dry and clean and fed and, not having seizures, but developing their character. So having children be able to make requests, having children be able to not just cry as a way of getting what they want. These are all what we might have given up when we first were so worried and concerned and shaped by the survival of our child. The shift usually needs to happen when we realize the child is going to have a future, and our parenting needs to be bigger than just making sure that they're safe and well. So we kind of go, the opportunity I give those parents is we go from being caretakers to people that are actually in charge of developing a person with all of the qualities and characteristics of a future that is satisfying and powerful. And up until maybe they met you, they didn't even know that that was a possibility. So it's kind of like they're afraid to even hope that that's really going to happen. But of course, how you see their child is that anything is possible. They're afraid to kind of hope that that's true. But of course, when I get them, they're like, oh my God, Anat has had this kind of breakthrough or that kind of breakthrough. And they're willing to actually be brave enough and courageous enough to hope there is going to be a 5-year-old there, or there is going to be some little child that's going to have friends and, be able to go to school, and all the things that they've given up on hoping for. They now go, oh my gosh, I can so see that that's a possibility. And then that does really then require a different form of parenting than just caregiving. They have to actually get excited about a future. So when that conversation happens, you should see the parents that I work with, their whole face changes. They're like, oh my God, it's like it's kind of like giving permission to bring on the parenting, what I would call parenting. Another word for parenting might be leadership. But, parenting that it requires way more than just making sure your child's safe, or that it's going to survive to the next month,
So I'm just writing down because I have questions.
Oh, sure. Of course. That's just like what I would say. What
you say, so you say different form of parenting. Again, I would like, because for you, it's so obvious, and normally what you do is you do it with people. You don't talk about it in general.
Yeah.
So it requires a way of being with the child and interacting with the child that is way more than just keeping the child safe and content.
Yes.
Now, I want to say a few words here, but my request of you, if it works for you, is to tell us some examples. You can do it through stories of parents that you've seen, or just generalization or examples, however you want to do it. Because, a lot of parents, and I'm now shifting from children with special needs, so we're going to what's called typically developing children. Parents have the sense that they have to do more with a child than just, feed them, bathe them, hold them, put them to sleep, and so on. Usually how that translates, as far as I can tell, is doing more stuff with a child. So it could be, and now it's very important, you read to your child, you play with your child, you talk to your child. I mean, we all know that that is part of how the brain grows and so on. So very, very important. However, sometimes this is pretty much the thing that parents know to do more of, right?
Right.
So, and sometimes in my world, it's doing more stretching, more exercising, which on our end, we always try to limit and but that's the kind of doing more. Working more on math, getting another tutor for reading and writing. Right. That, I'm saying it not just for you, I'm saying it also for the listener.
Sure.
So, yeah. So that's kind of very often. So I would like you, it requires way more. Are you able to maybe unpack a little, give some idea or ideas of what that might look like?
Yeah, when I'm saying more, what I mean is a different type of parenting. The shift is from caretaking to growing a child with a commitment to a future that requires things like trust and honor and respect and things that we maybe hadn't thought that we were going to be contributing to that child because we were worried about their survival. So then what I would call developing a child that can cope with the world and friendships, to provide the developmental conversations that go beyond just the physical caregiving of a child. But Anat, let me just give you an example because I have permission from a parent to do this. It'll be so clear through this example. I have a woman that I worked with some years ago, and she has a 3-year-old child, and she came to me and, she wanted breakthroughs as a parent. They're so precious. And she's sitting in my office and telling me, some of the situations. And I said, well, why don't we go for a breakthrough? And she goes, okay. And I said, just tell me something that's really been super hard for you with your child. The child was 3. And she said, oh gosh, I can't ever go anywhere. Takes my child like a half hour to urinate, and I never can go anywhere. I can't go to restaurants. I can't leave the house. I have to stay at the house. It's really, really hard on the mom, as you can imagine, and on the family and the husband and all the other children. And so I said to her, is that part of her diagnosis? Is something wrong with her, kidneys or her bladder or whatever? And she's, oh no, she hasn't got anything wrong with that. I said, well, let me ask you a question. What do you do, what do you do while the child's in there for a half hour? She says, oh, I read to her and I play puppets and I talk to her and everything. I said, oh my gosh, I have a daughter. She's 32 right now. But if I would stay in the bathroom and talk to her, well, she would hold her urine for an hour. I said, the fact that she only holds it for a half hour, are you kidding me? I said, your child loves this. And that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with your child. You just have to put her in there and, say, I'm going to be outside doing the dishes, tell me when you're done, and we'll see what happens. Of course, the child took 30 seconds to urinate. And then that mother finally got that, oh my gosh, some of the unworkability that goes on with her child absolutely could be something to do with her. It kind of takes a little bit of a moment of clarity for people to embrace the new set of eyes that I try to give people, which is, oh my gosh, there might be some things that you're doing, the doing of which has limited what's possible for your child. And, because we took one of the biggest things, then we worked on, her sleeping, and then we worked on her eating a full meal and all the things that mother in particular was having a challenge with. I always start with the parents with the lowest hanging fruit. I call it low hanging fruit, like the things that we can show the parents immediately that the child is going to respond to their leadership. They're going to respond to their parenting, no matter how great the practitioner is. And you guys are miracle workers, truly I've seen miracles. When you said I watched you with children, I literally was crying hysterically because I was watching a miracle happen with children. So I know that the work is miraculous. But parents sometimes think that they don't have, and they're with a child 23 hours a day. Even with a brilliant practitioner, you're only with the child an hour. The parents have a huge impact. 23 hours a day, the kids aren't going to get parenting on the corner. They're going to get parenting in their house by those parents. So the notion that you give some power to the parents and the parents don't have to feel like they're so victimized by the situation, and you give them tools for how to step up, there's not a single parent on the planet that isn't excited about that. Does that story sort of demonstrate what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Yes, and I happen to know who you're talking about. Yes. Obviously,
as I said, she's done the training, and she's a practitioner. She completely transformed her life. That was just the start of that conversation.
Yes. The only thing that I want to clarify what you said, and I know you know that, but I just want, again, for the people that are listening or watching, is when you said there's nothing wrong with a child, there was a lot of challenges. Actually, it was a child with a great number of challenges and serious ones, except there was nothing wrong with her ability to urinate.
You got it. That's exactly what I meant. Thanks for clearing that up. If I say, obviously, anything I say that you need to clarify, please feel free.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I always ask first, is it part of her special needs situation? And when she said no, I said, oh my gosh, then I think we have the answer here. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
Anyway, I have so many stories, Angel, but I just wanted to give you
I would love you. I hope that more stories that from your side.
I've got a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah. But so let's say I'm a parent. So first of all, I just want to say that it comes out like a sales pitch, but what the hell? Because I want people to have the access. We have filmed a 5-day parent-child workshop. And in that workshop, every day I brought Randy and gave her one precious hour because we only had 5 or 5.5 hours a day. Exactly. So we fought over the time. I gave Randy an hour a day to teach a course basically for the parents called, which I labeled, Parenting is Leadership. So there, Randy systematically kind of exposes her model. We'll do some of that also with future podcasts.
Yes.
But it's called the 5-day NeuroMovement 5-day parent-child workshop. So, or something like that. But you can find it on the website. So now I'm imagining that I'm a parent.
Yes.
And my child I have no problem going back when she was little. And she does not put her shoes on. She has to go to school. So let's say she's in 1st grade, roughly. I'm telling a real story. And she's taking forever to put the shoes on.
Yeah.
Where most parents end up having a power struggle with a child. And in a sense, I think about, I'll say that later. Where would I go, not having seen the parent-child workshop, not having worked with you privately? Can you tell a parent or give them some guidance where to go internally? What kind of hook or button or something inside them that they could go to that might give them an idea how to deal, in this case, the situation that I described?
Sure. Anat, I'm glad you referenced what I would call maybe my basic work. Those 5 hours in the workshop is what I call my basic educational work, that I give all parents. But one of the distinctions in that workshop, an hour-long conversation, is this notion of not being reactive. So when we react to our children, when we're fighting with our children, all of us feel terrible because we know this is ridiculous. We don't fight with children. They sometimes can get the better of us, but we all know that is not a very appropriate reaction to a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old or what have you. Another thing I might say also is that we don't negotiate with terrorists, so if a child is giving you a problem and they're terrorizing you, the last thing you want to probably do is negotiate. There's some things that we don't want to give our children choices about. You might say, do you want to put this pair of shoes on or that pair of shoes? But we are going to be putting on shoes. Do you want to wear this or this? But we are going to dress. So some of the things parents just have to be a little bit like less of a negotiation and more of this is how this is going to go. And when kids kind of get that there's a strong force in the room, like a force to be reckoned with, that they're not going to get away with acting out, there's always that part of it. And a little mistake I see when I'm in malls or when I'm in parks or whatever is parents trying to negotiate with a child when all the child wants is to be told what to do, not as a you will do this, not as an order, but just like this is how we get ready to go to school. And that should again not be a negotiation, but that needs to get set up way before the shoe problem. So the shoe problem is always a symptom of the child not recognizing somebody else is in charge. And one of the things I learned from you, Anat, is that when a child is kind of running the show, let's imagine they're 2 or 3 years old, not the shoe example, but a child's 2 or 3, and they sort of sussed out because they're so smart that if they cry, they'll get their way, or if they, bang their head, they'll get their way. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that by 2 or 3, a child has worked out that if I act out in a particular way, life's going to go the way I want it to go. And one of the things, the reason I want to stop parents from letting that happen is because if a child ever thinks they're in charge of the parent, if somehow the child, out of having cried and gotten their way many, many, many times in an habitual way, the child sometimes takes on the burden of thinking they're in charge of their parents. And the problem with that is it's just overwhelming for the child's brain. One of the things that I learned from you is that the child has to be in a calm, we don't want to stress out the child's brain. We want the child to be able to learn and to be calm. And so when they think they're in charge of the family, meaning that they are running their parents ragged or getting their way with their parents, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to the child's brain's ability to upgrade or to grow. So one of the ways that I tell the parents is that you want the child to know somebody is in charge other than them is a real favor that you're doing your child. It's taking the burden of being responsible for their parents. Now, of course, they don't sit in their bed and go, I'm really responsible for my parents. But energetically, they know that they're causing the parent to jump every time they do this or every time they do that. Or a child really, really appreciates a parent who's in charge. They also appreciate teachers that are in charge. I've seen you when I've been watching your lessons. And one of the things that happens with the child when they're with you is they can completely relax because guess what they know? You're in charge. There's not a moment you're not in charge when you're around that child. And they can relax in that space because that's all anybody really wants when they're a child is to know somebody else is going to be in charge. Not that we don't let them make choices or you like chocolate or vanilla, but we are going to eat that. Is a different kind of distinction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I want to step in here and say a few things, okay? Sure. So first of all, I want to, when you say that the child reckons there's a force here, or I want to really, really clarify a few things.
Sure, of course.
Because people come from what their associations and their past experiences. So I really want to stress fully that Randy is never forceful.
Oh,
wait, let me say it.
Yeah. Thank you.
She's powerful. She's passionate. She can be sometimes in your face. But she's actually always tender and always gentle. And all that, I think, is housed in real interest in the other person and in their experience and what will make things work best for them. Because this word force to reckon with, again, can be translated like a punishment or discipline or consequences or I say I don't want of course there's the word consequences, but I refuse to apply it. I say outcomes. They're outcomes. So the example I give for years now, and I think Randy too, and I'm going to show it, I hold a pen. What will happen if I open my fingers? It's going to fall into my hand. Then I go like, oh, no, I'm such a good child, I'm such a good person, or I have a disease, so please don't go down. It's going to go down. And one time, a million times, 100 million times, I do this, it'll do the same. People don't know the degree to which the brain is formed by the pull of the gravitational force, because it's the best teacher we will ever have. Because no matter what we do, if we do one thing, we'll get one outcome. We do another thing, we get another outcome. So a lot of what I believe Randy is talking about, and I'm talking, it's non-violent. And it's, unless there is room to get angry, because sometimes it's okay for the child to know that if you do that, that will create anger. I just referred to you, a little baby, that the parent would never show them that some things are preferable to other things. In my world, is creating a brain that can't make sense of the world. Because there's always preferences. It's distinctions, it's differentiation. So for me, a child that has all children are very special needs because they all have to grow and learn and everything.
Right.
But the child that has the extra burden, or the brain that has the extra burden, that there's something derailing it to some extent off the tracks, needs more an environment, human environment, that is predictable in a positive way. That means I do one thing, I get that. I do another thing, I get that. So again, I observed you with your own children, and how you talk to them, but they knew. I mean, Randy talks, they listen, but they want to listen. Now they're adults and they still call you to get your coaching and stuff. You created a lifetime coachees. Anyway, so it's non-violent. It's not angry. For me, when I am in a session with a child and the child starts doing blah, blah, whatever, and I keep going, however I keep going, it's because I see that they can. In other words, I empower them. I don't buy into, look at me, I'm crazy, or I'm handicapped, but at the same time, I never ask them to do things they can't do. I won't put them standing when they can't stand. I won't tell them, say banana, banana, banana when they can't talk, because I also know what that does to the brain, and I think it's not a good idea. But the way I interact with them and what I go with and and the little ones, sometimes, I don't know if I ever told you, that they want to do something. Oh yeah, they look at the mom, how they look to get, so they can start crying, because, and I have the parents look away and also. And I say, or they try to ask questions of the mother. I said, in the room, when you work with me, I answer the questions. I answer your questions, I ask mommy. And they kind of try anyway. So I asked them, who is the boss in the room? So some kids say, me. And I go, no. I mean, I have children that literally say it's them because that's their experience. It's what you're talking about.
I totally get it, yeah.
And so I said, wrong answer, try again. And then they go, mommy, and I say, yeah, everywhere else, but not in this room. Who is the boss in this room? And either they said or said, I'm the boss. I declare it, and that's it. So, and as you said, it's like, it's not only that they relax, they start learning in ways that seemed impossible seconds earlier.
Right.
So say a little bit more to parents where you come from, because I don't want them to start going like, don't do that, do this, because the child still experiences it as if it's from them out, not forced on top of them.
Okay, perfect. So, Anat, every child and parent is really, really different, but there's enough of a commonality for me to be able to address this, which is...
Okay, and maybe give an example after that.
Okay, sure. Is that, I'm so glad you clarified, because I don't mean, and ever do I mean force. It never works, and fighting with your child never works. I always try to have parents get that children do best when they're winning. Also, by the way, they do best when they're winning. everybody does best when they're winning. Even in my corporate work, what I do when I go in is I create a culture in which people are feeling like they're getting their job done and they feel like they're winning, and then people are motivated. So even a 3-year-old, when they feel like they're somehow winning at something, they do way better than any kind of consequence-based parenting where you yell at them or you take away things, or all of that consequence-based speaking, like if you don't eat this, you're going to get in trouble, is not the way to set up a culture in your family as an ongoing healthy culture. In fact, what I give parents is the skill set and the tools for generating a culture where the child can experience winning at something. So when you give a child clarity around how something is going to work, like mealtime or bedtime, or all those sticking points like getting to school or any of those things, and you've worked out a way that the child can feel like they're doing a good job, the child always gravitates towards that. But it's up to the parent to design a structure in which that can happen and not be unrealistic. So let me give you an example. I had a parent of a 5-year-old boy, and he was responsible for feeding the child dinner. The mother worked until 8 o'clock at night, so he was the one that stepped in and did the child's dinner. And every single night he's fighting with his child about dinner. It's just insane, trying to get his child to eat one more bite. And first he took away the iPad. Then he realized that was going to screw up his life, if he took away the iPad. So he, that didn't work. You're not going to get dessert, which is, parent 101, I'm going to kill you if you don't eat your food, basic fighting every single night. So I just can't take it. I said, okay, how about this? We're going to create a condition in which everybody gets to be happy at mealtime. So what I did, we designed, I said, you're so creative. Let's design something. We're going to have a little tiny plate, like a little plate, and we're only going to put 5 bites on it, 5 bites of food. You're not going to load it like a regular plate. You're going to put 5 bites of food, which is less than what he knows his child likes. So, all he had to do was have that child sit in front of a tiny little plate. Everybody else had full plates of food, and that little child got 5 bites. And of course, before you knew it, the child was asking for more food instead of this enormous, unrealistic approach, thinking that, I don't know, the child somehow want to eat as much as you think they should or whatever the deal is. The child had to feel like mealtime was a way for them to win. And because the child was 5 and we could do this, we set up a little chart right there next to the table that every single time the child for 3 days in a row, we only did it 3 days in a row to break the habit of it, is that if they ate that 5 bites, and of course the child always did and asked for more, that we put a little X on the chart. And if they did that 3 days in a row, because they're 5 and they can play that game, is that they got to get this little prize. And the prize was right there, by the way, waiting for the child. So the child could be drooling over it, like they really wanted to get that prize. Could be a dollar toy from the dollar store, because, kids would like any stupid thing that's in a package, that they could win. Kids love winning. So when you can create a game out of it, and you can make it fun instead of heavy-handed and, threatening your child and being upset every single night and everything, you have to bring a little bit of creativity to the deal and not get so, stuck in the way it should be. No parenting is going to be successful when you come from how your parents parented or how the neighbor down the street is parenting. You need to design ways in which your family can be harmonious, but that your child gets a chance to win. I can't tell you how many of those that I've created with different parents, and they're so relieved to not have to fight with their children anymore. Nobody wants to be a person who has to yell at their kid to do homework or eat that or brush their teeth. All those really simple, what we might call routine things. If a parent's smart, they're creating a way in which the child can really do well with bedtime and really do well with eating. And we sort of pick, when I'm starting to work with parents in a long-term way, over a period of time, we pick what I call the sticking points or the pain points, like the thing that's the most difficult for both the child and the parent. So it might be the sleeping, it might be the eating, it might be brushing their teeth, or getting shoes on them to get them to school. So the minute the parent gets that they can actually win at parenting rather than what they consider to be failing or struggling with their parenting, they're so on board. And then they can come up with such creative ways in which they can all get on the same side. No child has to feel like the parent is, bossing them around. It's just not a good culture for anybody to feel that they're at the effect of anybody else. They have to feel like they have a say in how their lives go. Does that make sense? Is that good? Does that give you a good example?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful example. It also makes me smile. A bunch of years back, they brought to me she was at the time 2 or 2.5-year-old child that was not eating. So it was a big deal. Anyway, that just is a feeding course, 5-day parents and little children, babies, whatever. And so I got that all, and I started working with her, and I realized that she actually had some issues that weren't diagnosed because they were so faint in terms of spasticity in one side. So there must have been some event happened in the brain, either in utero or at birth, but it wasn't extreme enough for people to recognize. And there was a huge, deal around her eating, and the whole family, got organized around that. So what I did, I worked with her to, my work to get her to be better, to function better and all that stuff. But and the mother used to feed her a bottle with, very rich food at night, because that was when she pumped in the calories, and the child was half asleep, and she would just, of course the child woke up in the morning, or maybe 2 bottles, during the night. So she wasn't hungry. Mm-hmm. She wasn't hungry, and then everybody expected her to have the meals. So I asked the mother to not do the second bottle. So I said, don't get her to starve, but the child needs to learn to begin feeling hunger. Yeah. Because that's how the system's supposed to work. And then I asked, and I said, bring the foods that she likes. What's her preferred? Of course, all junk food. Cheese puffs of the worst kind, and I don't remember, all kinds of things in bags that you take individual pieces, which was very useful. Yeah. And another thing is that the child, didn't like to drink much, whatever. So I actually had the mother bring a large plate, because I wanted the child to realize how little she got. Because, of course, just like with your parents, they put lots of food hoping they'll eat some of it, right?
Right.
So I asked the child, so she had a choice. I said, so I told her. So that's another example, I think, in terms of being a leader. I said to her, I'm going to now give you food. You're either going to eat it or not. And I gave her an option between 2 or 3 of those bags. And of course, I slow everything down and I amplify everything. So she chose a cheese, like little round thing, ball, cheese puff. I said to her, that's great. And really, really slowly, I reached into the bag, and I put 1 cheese puff. And I continued working with my hands on her. And you could see the child was just so surprised. It was just 1 cheese puff on this plate. So perfect. She ate it. And I took a little time. I took my sweet time. And then I said to her, do you want another cheese puff? And she said, yes. I said, do you want 1 or 2? And she was little, but she knew what's bigger. She said 2. I said, okay. I gave her 2, and I repeated that. It went to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. At 10, she didn't. But when it's a lot of cheese puffs, because she got 1, then she got 2, then she got 3, then she got 4, then she got 5, then she got 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I knew she'd get really thirsty, because she ate all this salt in those junk food, right? So, and even if you feed it, unless it's medically dangerous, you just take a break from giving perfect food to make sure that the system starts working. Anyway, so that is reminded me. And then what I did is I set up, because they would sit at dinner, the 2 adults and the child. She was an only child at that time. And they would wait for her to eat. So I said, how long are you around the table? I don't remember. There's only an hour and a half. When an hour and a half of not succeeding. So I said, okay, the way you're going to do it is you're going to say, we're going to have dinner in 5 minutes. I'm going to put you in the high chair. and I'm going to put food in front of you. You're going to either eat it or not. And in 15 minutes, we close the kitchen. From now on, the kitchen gets closed like a restaurant. And she said, what if she's hungry? I said, that'll be great. She said, what if she's going to bed hungry? I said, fantastic. She won't do it more than once.
How old was this child? Was this a child that understood?
2.5. 2.5.
Okay.
2.5, it worked.
Wow. Because, 15 minutes that's like pretty amazing. She got it. You know what I'm saying? That's
No. What she got is not what's 15 minutes. I said it so the mother will have it organized in her brain. But she got it that she was sick. They had their dinner. They asked her if she wants help. Want today? She said, yes, fine. No, they left her alone. And I said, give her food that she can just pick, that she can be self-sufficient. And 15 minutes, they said, okay, dinner is over. So the child just had this experience that she's sitting in front of food doing her thing, and the dinner is over. And the mother says, dinner over, goes and throws the food out. And the child sees it. It's gone. It's over. That's how I got my dog to start eating.
Well, not obviously the moral, let's say, of these stories are that parents have to sometimes bring a creative approach and, bring some thinking and design to their parenting. And what allows for you to come up with that idea, or for me to come up with the idea, and this is the thing I just love about your work, Anat, is that you come from, you know that anything is kind of possible for the children that you're working with. And that eyesight you talked about, you see that that's possible for that child. It's really the notion that if you design it and you do it and you can see that that's a possibility for the child. It's, again, a place that I would ask my parents to come from, is that we can fix this. This is something we can actually impact. And it's so exciting for parents when they start to realize that some of those pain points have to do with their maybe lack of clarity around that they can make that kind of impact. It's almost giving parents permission that they can bring a intelligent design to their parenting based on the goal that they're going for, and the culture that they want to have as part of their family. Most parents don't really have a conversation around what's our commitment, what's the culture we want to have for our family, how do we want to raise our child. It's just not a conversation that most parents, especially with special needs situation, they're so used up, they're so overly tired and having been up all night or whatever, that they give very little thought to what are we going for here, and having the design come from there, where your child feels supported, encouraged, and empowered, and which is, I know, where you come from. So that's the flavor. That's the flavor that we're bringing to parents. And like I said, I've never ever had to talk a parent into wanting to be extraordinary. My experience is parents would do anything. They would throw themselves in front of a bus. They would give a kidney. They would do anything. So these little ideas that they could, do this and this differently, and your child will have a better outcome and you'll have a better outcome, is so exciting for parents. It's such a relief that somebody can give them a little bit of coaching on how to get through some of those really tough situations.
That's wonderful. I mean, of course, I love what you say and what you're presenting. Or I wouldn't have you on that podcast. I use the word fix, and I want to use it as a jumping, whatever you call it. I am very, very strong, and you know that, and I know how you meant it, but I'd say from fixing to connecting.
Sure, seeing everything perfectly.
Yeah, I know, but I think that that's really important, and then I want to link it to the parents and to the eyesight we talked about. We can't fix anything in another person. The person, somehow, their system, their brain, their heart, their cells, their metabolism has to do it. We look to provide conditions and ensure the necessities so that the person can do it. So the most basic thing is food and, shelter, love, all that's, being connected with other humans. So when I think, the word that I now have written like 3-4 times when you're talking is freedom. And I'm looking at the freedom of the parent an internal freedom. So, because your work on one hand gives the tools and your approach and so on creates a freedom, but that freedom can operate when the parent is connected to the child. So when I work with the children, I mean, I don't think of it or try to do it, but it's kind of like I'm informed by the child. I see what's going on. And I don't talk about the professional side of what I do that people can't just do because I talk to them on a podcast. But like the child that doesn't eat, if you see that you try to push them to eat and they back off and trust to, the first thing to do is to say, wait a minute, that's not working. I'm giving myself permission to step out of doing this. What can I do? I don't know a human being that won't come up with creative ideas. But that's, again, looking at yourself. Who am I doing it for? I remember as a parent, there were times where I was very strict with my child. I mean, she came out wonderful, but I wasn't wonderful at that time. And she, you know, maybe part of the value of me not being wonderful was that she learned that the world has different kind of people acting in different kind of ways. And she got a little more resilience. But the thing is not to be a perfect parent. There's nothing to do. It's so important, and you can't fix your child, because whenever we have the idea that we can fix another human being, we act as if we're God, and if we don't succeed, something is wrong with us, or we're failing the child, or something. But you connect to the child, and when I connect to the children, the very first thing I see is their vitality. They have life. They're alive. They're taking the next breath. So they're alive. There is something there that is ready to flower, to grow. And we don't know exactly how, but it's working on it. So then you join the child, not by necessarily giving them everything they want. Again, we're leaders. But from the point of view of, I know you could do that. Now, when I put this plate with one little cheese puff in front of the girl, if she had ignored it or if she got offended, I would have had to do something different.
Of course.
I tell the story not because I knew ahead of time how she would act, but I decided to give it a try.
Yeah, you got it.
You know, so how about we have just very little, we have just little time left, 2 minutes. So I want to give it to you, Randy. What would you like to either talk about a tool that you want to send them off, or
okay, I really have something, and I'm so glad you gave me a minute, because I realize I want to say this one thing just in case I don't ever get to come to another pod thing.
That's not going to happen.
Okay, well, anyway, this is one thing I want to say, and it really makes a huge difference, is parents need to take care of themselves. So I cannot tell you how often I give parents permission to go have a date night, to go get massages, to find something you're interested in, to have friends, to, give themselves a break from their children. There is just no bigger gift you can give your child than being happy and well, and having a good relationship with your partner, and having a healthy body, and feeling somehow that you got a massage, and that your life isn't just about caregiving, and that you had a manicure, and that you found a book that you're interested in, or that you got to take a nap, one time under a tree at the park. Believe it or not, when a parent isn't taking care of themselves and their own well-being and their own personal relationships, like with their significant other or their partner or their spouse, it's a real consequence to your parenting. Believe it or not, one of the best things you can do for your child is to be happy, well, rested, taken care of, celebrating your own life. Not the part of yourself that's a parent, but your life. Your children want to fit into your life. They don't want it to be that you're sacrificing everything, and the weight of the responsibility of the parent is on the child. So having a good, satisfying life is often what I give parents permission to do. It's like they somehow needed permission to do it, because they thought that the way they were expressing their love was to give it all. But it's really not the case. No child wants you to surrender your happiness and your well-being to take care of them. In fact, that's a burden. So I just want to leave parents with the notion that they really do. That's a gift that you can give your child, to be happy and well and satisfied in life, and to find a way to nurture yourself, separate, apart from being a parent, which should be a part of your life, not your whole life. So anyway, I know I don't have much time. I could talk about it for another 2 hours. But that is one of the things that parents are super grateful when they are here, that I go, I think probably you need to go to a movie. And they're like, oh my God, I haven't been to a movie in a year, you know? So I think, you know, that's kind of the complexity of being a whole person, is something you then bring to your parenting that your child is very grateful about. Your child wants you to be happy and well. So I think that's just we could say more about that later, but I know that's just something that really makes a difference.
Well, this is amazing. There is so much value in everything that you brought. And I'm so happy we finally launched the first together.
Oh, no, it's like, I'm so honored, so privileged. It's always such an incredible gift that you give me to be able to have access to these extraordinary people, all the practitioners and all the parents. They're just like heroes, and they're totally inspire and move me. I'm always moved by the commitment. So thank you. Just thank you for honoring me this way. It's so special. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Randy. And thank you, everybody that's been listening. And you can always listen again, because it's the link is there. And more to come with Randy and others.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat Baniel. You will find all of our podcasts and additional resources on our website at www.anatbanielmethod.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn. We look forward to seeing you online for our next NeuroMovement Revolution.